I, William Wyatt of Salem, testify and say that last Monday evening, being the 5th of March, I was in Boston down at Treats Wharf, and hearing the bells ring, I thought there was a fire in the town. So I hastened up to the townhouse where I saw an officer of army lead 7 or 8 soldiers down in seeming haste to the customs house. I followed them, and when the officer had got there with the men, he told them to get into formation. I stood nearby and heard the officer order his men to load their weapons, which they did. They remained in that position for about 6 minutes with their firelocks rested and bayonets fixed. I observed a considerable number of young lads standing about in the middle of the street, facing the soldiers only about 10 feet from them. I observed some of them, they had sticks in their hands, were laughing, shouting, huzzahing, and crying fire. But I did not observe that any of them threw anything at the soldiers or threatened any of them. Then the officer moved and stepped behind the soldiers and told the soldiers to fire. They were not firing, so he stamped his foot and told them, "Fire! Be consequent that it will." Then the second soldier in line fired off his gun. Then after a very short pause, I heard a blast, one after another as quick as possible. The soldier on the end was priming his weapon to fire again. At that time, the townspeople had withdrawn from the scene. Most of them were further down the street, but he turned his gun toward them and fired upon the crowd. Immediately after the first firing, I saw 3 lads fall down in the street. Then I saw the captain wave his sword or stick and said, "Ye rascals, soldiers, what did ye fire for?" Then he took the weapon away from the soldier, reloading his weapon. It seemed the military men were confounded and fired no more. I then went behind them where one of the men was laying to see whether he was dead. Another townsman told me he was dead. And the last thing I remembered, as the officer was going back down King Street, a gentleman spoke to him and said, "Captain Preston, for God's sake, keep your men in order." That's all I have to say.